What's going on, everyone? My name is Jasmine. On today's episode of The Slain Project, we're going to be talking about the disappearance and murder of 16-year-old Ramona Wilson from Smithers, British Columbia. Now, I featured her in my Highway of Tears video, and I've been thinking about her a lot lately, so I thought it was a good time to do a full-length video for her. And her mother has always said that nobody gets away with murder. Nobody. So if that is you, if you are Ramona's killer, you need to come forward and confess before it's your turn to meet your maker. And if you would like to see more videos on missing and murdered Indigenous people, click that subscribe button and the notification bell. Now let's get right into it. Ramona Wilson was born on February 15th, 1978, and was 16 years old when she disappeared and was murdered. She lived with her mother Matilda on Railway Avenue in Smithers, BC, along Highway 16, also known as the Highway of Tears. She was the youngest child out of Matilda's 6 kids. Ramona had an older sister named Brenda and 4 brothers. Matilda had 5 children with her first husband before he passed away. She was widowed and left all alone with her 5 children when they were still very young. Matilda also went to the Lee Jack Residential School and was traumatized by that experience, which led her to battle alcoholism for many years. With the added stress of raising a family on her own, she fell back into alcoholism. Her children were placed in foster care for a few years before she was able to get them back. But in the end, one of her sons was adopted out. But Matilda always made sure that birthdays and holidays were special. The family did not have much money, but she made sure that all of her kids felt the joy of each special occasion, and each appropriate holiday was always celebrated with a special feast. Matilda was still a single mother at the time she became pregnant with Ramona. She was told that she could never have children again after the birth of her last son 7 years prior. In the summer of 1977, Matilda thought she was coming down with the flu, but the doctor said she was pregnant. She considered this as a gift from the Creator. This made Ramona very special to every member of her family. Her older sister Brenda was 12 at the time, and she was so happy to have a little sister. She thought she was going to be the only girl in her family. Matilda is First Nations, and Ramona's father is stated as being non-native. Their relationship was abusive and did not last. Brenda has stated that he seemed kind of racist towards Native people, which she thought was odd because Ramona was half Native. But Ramona was her family's pride and joy. She was raised with so much love. When she was a little girl, they always made sure that she was dressed nicely and had her hair fixed. Her brothers were very watchful over her and carried her around like a baby until she was 7 years old. Matilda said that Ramona had a bubbly personality. The house was always full of noise and laughter with Ramona around. At the early age of 12, Ramona decided she wanted to go to school to become a psychologist at the University of Victoria. She wanted to help people through their pain and suffering. She would be the first of her family to attend university. Ramona also studied French, enjoyed playing baseball, and when she was old enough, she got a job at a diner called Smitty's. Ramona would sometimes skip school, and when she was confronted by a school official about it, she thanked them for caring and taking the time to speak to her about it. Ramona had a best friend named Crystal. She met her one day while they were both skipping class, and they were about the same age. Crystal was also friends with another young girl who went missing from Smithers 4 years before Ramona on June 13, 1990. Her name was Delphine Nicole. Crystal and Delphine both used to hang out with Ramona's brothers. Delphine disappeared after hanging out with Crystal and some other friends. At the end of the night, she started to hitchhike home and was never heard from again. I have Delphine featured in my Highway of Tears video if you want to learn more about her. On Friday, June 10th, 1994, Ramona spent the night with her boyfriend in Morristown, about 30 kilometers away from Smithers. Morristown was renamed in 2018 to its original name of Whitsett. Ramona returned to Smithers around noon the next day on Saturday, June 11th. I am not sure how she traveled to and from her boyfriend's house, but hitchhiking was a popular travel option back then. There was no bus service in the area at the time, and most people and families could not afford a vehicle. And some people still hitchhike in the present day. Ramona was walking down Main Street when she arrived in town and ran into her uncle. It was graduation weekend and he said he was going to be a designated driver. The uncle asked what her plans were and that he could give her a ride later if she needed one. Main Street was a common place to find and catch a ride with someone you knew. A lot of people caught rides from there. Ramona chatted with him a bit and told him she planned on going to a party at Lake Kathleen near the Smithers Airport. Ramona went home and slept until about 6 p.m. She got up and got ready and then had dinner with her mom, Matilda. At about 9:30 p.m., Ramona was on the telephone before she left home. Matilda just assumed she was talking to her best friend Crystal, but is not 100% sure. Matilda was washing dishes when Ramona left out the door. Ramona shouted to her mom, "See you, Mom." Matilda did not watch her leave, but she also said, "See you, take care." This was the last time Matilda would ever see or hear Ramona's voice. Sunset on this date in Smithers is officially recorded at 10:05 p.m., so it was just nearing sunset when Ramona walked out of the door. When Ramona left her house, she went down the back alley to Alfred Street, and she stopped to talk to some people she knew. They were also having a party. She soon left and continued down Alfred Street. This route leads to Main Street, which was about 4 blocks from Ramona's house. Crystal lived not too far from Ramona, maybe about a mile, but she said that they made plans for Ramona to meet her later that night in Hazleton at a dance. Hazleton is 70 kilometers away. It is assumed that Ramona was going to Lake Kathleen for the party and then was going to go to Hazleton to meet Crystal, but Ramona never met up with Crystal at the dance. It also is not known if Ramona was hitchhiking along the highway or if she caught a ride with someone she knew along Main Street. In the Finding Dawn documentary, her older sister Brenda had said Ramona had asked her for a ride earlier in the day. She told her she wasn't able to. Brenda also went on to say that Ramona never mentioned leaving town or hitchhiking. When Brenda spoke at the MMIW inquiry in Prince George, she said that Ramona had stopped by her friend's house where they were having a barbecue and asked her partner at the time for a ride. I believe this would be when it was stated that Ramona stopped at the house on Alfred Street. Alcohol was being consumed at the barbecue and there was not a sober person available at the time to give her a lift. Brenda deeply regrets this, but how could she have known something bad was going to happen? None of us do. This leaves me wondering why Ramona would not just call or meet up with her uncle along Main Street. He had told her earlier that he was available to give rides to people because he was going to be sober that night. Did she call and he wasn't home? Did she miss him when she arrived on Main Street? Who else saw her on Main Street? In a V-Pro documentary, a woman named Joyce Pottinger said her teenage daughter saw Ramona the night she vanished at a baseball game. Ramona had asked her daughter to hitchhike with her to Morristown, but she declined. This has never been confirmed or denied by the RCMP. But when Ramona did not show up in Hazleton on Saturday night, Crystal just assumed she was in Morristown with her boyfriend. In 1994, most everyone relied on landline phone service, so plans could change and you had no way of immediately letting someone know if they were not home when you called. Matilda thought Ramona was with Crystal all weekend. On Sunday, Ramona's boyfriend called her house asking for her. Matilda told him she was at Crystal's. The boyfriend and Crystal both realized that Ramona was missing at this point. Not wanting to get Ramona in trouble, in case she just was with another friend, Crystal did not tell Matilda she was missing until Monday, when she did not show up for school or work. Crystal then came clean with Matilda and said she was not with Ramona all weekend. Her mom knew that something was really wrong because Ramona was going to give her 2 weeks notice at work that Monday. Ramona had just found out she gotten an internship as a peer counselor on Friday, June 10th at the Smithers Community Services Association. Ramona was on the path of fulfilling her dream of becoming a psychologist. She was extremely excited and told her mom it was the best day of her life when she found out she got this opportunity. When the family went to report Ramona missing, the RCMP showed no sense of urgency. Delphine Nicole was an indigenous 15-year-old girl who had vanished 4 years earlier, around the same time in June, just like Ramona did. She was last known to be hitchhiking from Smithers to Telkwa. The RCMP also showed no urgency in Delphine's case, but 2 missing young girls from the same town, under similar circumstances, should have caused a bit of panic with the police. Many people think that because they were both indigenous, the RCMP did not care. The RCMP suggested things like maybe Ramona just had too much fun over grad weekend and would be home after she recovered. Or maybe she just needed a break from her family. The fact that Ramona was only 16 and they were told she was a responsible person did not affect the way they handled the situation. The family was told that they had to wait a couple days to report her missing, even though she had already been missing for 2 days by the time anyone knew for sure. This happens all the time in missing persons cases. Law enforcement will say that the person is just out there partying or just wants to get away from everyone. Often people are told that they must wait 24 or 48 hours to file a missing persons report. But this is not true. You can file a report right away if you feel something is not right. With no help from the RCMP, Ramona's family phoned everyone they knew, posted missing persons flyers, and searched everywhere they could think of, even going to the apartments at Lake Kathleen where the party was supposedly held. The guy who held the party was an alleged drug dealer, and there were always people coming and going from the apartment. But nobody there remembered or admitted that Ramona was ever there the night she disappeared. Ramona's immediate and extended family went out searching everywhere they could think of. Matilda would later say that she was desperate to find her and that she was afraid that Ramona was being held against her will and or being tortured. The first newspaper article about Ramona was 11 days after she vanished. It was stated that the RCMP had begun to interview people to help pinpoint when and where Ramona was last seen. The RCMP also said that they hit a bunch of dead ends and that they were not treating it as foul play, but also were not ruling out that possibility. About a week later, police searched alongside the highway from Telkwa to Morristown, and a helicopter searched along the Bulkley River. They also said that they followed up on about 100 tips. Around the same time Ramona went missing, another young indigenous girl went missing and was eventually found murdered. Her name was Roxanne Thiara, and she was 15 years old. She was last seen in Prince George in early July 1994, and her body was found on August 17, 1994, 2 kilometers east of Burns Lake along Highway 16. Her murder is also unsolved. In December 1994, another young indigenous girl who knew Roxanne also came up missing and was found murdered. Her name was Alicia Germain, who went by the first name Leah. She had just turned 16 years old. She was found stabbed to death behind a school 15 kilometers outside of Prince George. These 3 cases and the disappearance of Delphine Nicole in 1990 would lead investigators to believe that a possible serial killer was on the loose along Highway 16. Ramona's best friend Crystal also knew Roxanne, and before Ramona's remains were found, the RCMP questioned Crystal on more than one occasion while she was pregnant. They wanted to know why 3 of her friends turned up missing. They were referring to Ramona, Roxanne, and Delphine. The RCMP seemed to imply that Crystal knew something and was refusing to talk. These interviews rattled Crystal, and she was adamant that she did not know anything or could not think of anything that might connect these cases. Crystal also said that the RCMP did not believe someone took Ramona and harmed her until her body was found. They were just under the assumption she ran away. Police would receive a telephone tip on January 27, 1995, that said Ramona's body was west of Smithers. The caller remained anonymous and said that their friend told them what happened to Ramona. The RCMP said that they could not move on this tip without more precise info. Matilda then pleaded in the local newspaper for the caller to come forward again, but they never did. Then on April 9, 1995, 10 months after Ramona disappeared, some guys were four-wheeling 11 kilometers from Smithers when they got stuck in the mud and were looking for tree branches to get them unstuck when they found Ramona's body. It should be noted that some sources say April 10th. The area where Ramona was found was off an old horse trail in a tree line near the Smithers Airport runway and off Yelich Road. This was in the general area of the apartments the party at Lake Kathleen was held. Lake Kathleen and the airport would technically be northwest of Smithers, but remember the anonymous caller only mentioned second-hand knowledge of Ramona's murder. They probably did not know she was next to the airport. Ramona was found next to a cedar tree. She was nude. Her clothing, some leggings, and a purple sweater were found folded neatly near her body. Also nearby was a bright yellow rope, 3 nylon zip ties, and a small pink water gun shaped like brass knuckles. The spot she was found at was not too far from a set of houses and was known to be used by hunters, dog walkers, and as a teen hangout. A victim services advocate from the RCMP called Matilda to tell her about the discovery of the body. They were not yet sure if it was Ramona, but they soon called her back and said that they indeed confirmed it was Ramona by using dental records. Matilda was called into the RCMP detachment to identify the clothing. The whole family went with her, including aunts, uncles, and cousins. Crystal was there too, along with the counselor from the high school Ramona attended. Matilda and Brenda went into the room to identify the clothing. Matilda confirmed that the clothing was indeed Ramona's, but Matilda asked where her shoes were. They were not there. She had just bought Ramona a pair of white and pink Reebok high-top shoes. The police said that they did not find any shoes and suggested that maybe an animal got off with them. The next day, Ramona's uncles went to where she was found to look for the shoes. They searched for miles around the dump site, but never found them. With the absence of the shoes, it is possible that the killer could have kept them as a trophy. Footwear and jewelry are often the most common trophies that killers like to keep. Her folded clothing makes me believe that her killer knew her and or was remorseful for what they had done to her. But with the absence of the shoes, this also makes me think that this person has killed before. Could the killer also be responsible for Delphine's disappearance and presumed murder? Ramona was also not dumped in an out-of-the-way spot. It seems as if the killer wanted her body to be found eventually. What significance does the airport have to the killer, and could they have possibly worked there? They could have glanced at the area every day at work and admired their sick act from afar. Matilda was told her daughter's death was obviously sexually motivated and that she was strangled. She was never really told anything beyond that. The RCMP also believes that she was attacked and murdered at the spot where she was found, and that the killer is probably still in the Smithers area. Nobody ever reported that they had picked up Ramona hitchhiking, so it could be presumed that she was murdered by the person who gave her a ride, whether she was hitchhiking or catching a ride with an acquaintance. Since she was found about 11 kilometers from Smithers and rope and zip ties were used, it would seem that the person was a seasoned killer if they had these items in their car. The short distance from town also seems like the killer got straight to business and that they knew what they were going to do when they encountered her. But what if what Matilda thought about Ramona being held against her will was true? It would explain why there was a water gun shaped like brass knuckles found near Ramona's body. It could have been used to intimidate her. It would also seem like this type of intimidation would come from a younger aged person. Could she have made it to the party at Lake Kathleen and something happened there? She could have been held captive and then brought to the spot where she was found and murdered there. Her clothing could have been removed to further humiliate her. One final act of disrespect by the killer. Shortly after she was found, Ramona's family went to the spot where she was found to bless the area. Ramona's Aunt Rachel knelt down to pick up some soil. When she looked at her hand, there was hair and clothing fibers. She went to the RCMP to show them what she had found, and they did not seem to care. Rachel was told that no one was there and to come back tomorrow. It was hard to believe that there were still pieces of Ramona out there in the field, and that the RCMP seemed to care less about possible evidence that was found. Did the RCMP ever go back to look for more hair or clothing fibers? The killer's hair also could have been out there. I want to know if the family was ever given an autopsy report, even if it was redacted. Did they scrape under Ramona's fingernails for DNA? Was the rope ever tested for DNA? It is stated that it was partially buried, so it is possible that there could be some forensic evidence left on the rope. The RCMP is notorious for not commenting on their progress during investigations. I do understand that they cannot tell us everything, but a little info would be better than silence. In a 2006 documentary, Matilda went to Ramona's dump site and was asked if she thought the killer has ever come back to the spot. She said that she does believe that he has, and said that she has seen footprints around the area when she has visited. She went on to say that after everything was over, she contemplated on taking her own life. Matilda began to drink heavily and just wanted to die so she could go to where Ramona was now. Brenda had reached out to her and said that she and her brothers needed their mom. Matilda snapped herself out of it, and along with Brenda, they began to advocate for the Highway of Tears victims and all other MMIW by holding walks, marches, rallies, and meetings. They began to hold a yearly walk to Yellich Road in Ramona's honor. They wanted to make sure that Ramona was not forgotten and rightfully remembered. Brenda has stated that in the beginning, some people were trying to say that Ramona was a prostitute, but that was far from the truth. In 2006, the family members of the Highway of Tears victims began a walk from Prince Rupert to Prince George for a symposium that was being held to discuss the missing and murdered girls along Highway 16 and to hopefully come up with a plan to end the violence. The group met Matilda in Smithers, and she led the walk the rest of the way to Prince George. When they arrived in Prince George, drummers met the marchers to escort them into the city. Matilda was strong the whole time she was on the walk. She talked and laughed, but when she got to the podium at the symposium, her emotions took over and she began to cry. Her strength and determination in seeking justice for Ramona will never stop or waver. Former RCMP and private investigator Ray McElko, who passed away in 2017, investigated many of the Highway of Tears cases. A lot of the victims' families are on the record stating that they trusted him and they believed the information he spoke about. He said that in 2008, he interviewed a witness to Ramona's murder who named other witnesses and a suspect. Ray also claimed that this witness took him to the alleged crime scene and to an old wrecked vehicle that was used during the crime. Ray seemed to believe this witness because he had said that he believes that multiple people were involved in her murder. He also claimed that the RCMP never properly investigated this witness. He had taken this witness to the Smithers RCMP detachment, and he said that they didn't even know who Ramona was. He explained to them the circumstances of her case and said that Vancouver was now in charge of her case. This was a result of Project EPANA. The task force was established in 2005, and in 2006, they took over 9 cases related to the Highway of Tears. In 2007, they added 9 more cases, bringing the total to 18 cases. But many locals will tell you that the actual count is much higher. Ray persisted that the Smithers RCMP interview this witness, which they finally did. But when Ray followed up later with the witness, they said that they were never re-interviewed and that they never spoke to anyone from EPANA. Was this witness Ray spoke to the anonymous caller? If you are the anonymous tipster who called back in January 1995, please speak up again and let Ramona's family know who exactly done this to her. Matilda wished that she would have found Ramona alive, but she is very grateful that she was able to at least find her and lay her to rest. The 10 months Ramona was missing was a never-ending nightmare. She feels for the other families who are still out there waiting for their loved ones to be found. Ramona's murder is still unsolved to this day. As of this recording, it has been 29 years since she was murdered. Ramona was buried at the Smithers Cemetery, and her grave marker reads, "Our little sweetheart." Over time, people change, loyalties change, people grow old and die. Ramona was taken and her life was stolen from her and her family. Please reach out to law enforcement if you have any information that will solve the murder of Ramona Wilson. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you knew Ramona, please share any memories of her, and I will see you in my next video.